Robert, I don't think this is very funny. Bobby. Who is this?
As you watch the screen, your heart begins to beat faster. There's a fluttering in the pit of your stomach. Your throat is dry. Your palms damp. Suddenly a chill runs down your spine. You clutch the person next to you. You tell yourself, it's only a movie. It's only a movie. But sooner or later, it's time to go home.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
And I'm Ron.
And this is our review of Friday the 13th, Part 3, starring Dana Kimmel, Paul Kratka, Tracy Savage, Jeffrey Rogers, Catherine Parks, Larry Zerner, and Richard Berger. Directed by Steve Miner, released in 1982 at a budget of $2.3 million, grossed $36.7 million at the box office. Just hold on a minute. The returns on these movies are insane. I mean, think about this from Paramount's point of view, right? These movies cost nothing to make. They buy the distribution cheap for them. They spend almost no money promoting them, and they get $36 million on the back end off of it. Holy cow! No wonder they put them out once a year.
Well, it's the Blumhouse model,
right? Except none of these actors are getting anything on the back end, I would think.
Right, and you've never heard of any of them, and you'll never hear of any of them again,
unless you go to conventions. Where many of them, by the way, are very proud of their Friday the 13th legacy. So you can go all over YouTube and listen to them talk about it. So, and
as well they should be.
Yeah, credit to it, especially Larry Zerner, the guy that plays Shelley here or whatever. He's an entertainment lawyer in Hollywood now. So he totally owns up to the fact that he was just geeky looking, and they're like, yeah, and that was it. Tracy Savage went on to be a broadcast journalist in L.A. So. Which is amazing because she's got the voice for it completely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and not to mention she's gorgeous. But we'll get to her in a minute though, because I have a special tribute to her as we go. But Steve Miner back to direct here for from Part 2 to Part 3. They decided to do this one in 3D. Now, have you ever seen this in 3D? I haven't.
I have not either. But the version I watched via Google Play, the version I rented, had the 3D effects intact. But I don't have any glasses or anything, and it wasn't presented in 3D, but you still got all the stuff, being moved towards the camera. That's
actually either cut of the film that you get. You know which things are in 3D. It's shot in the same kind of camera that Jaws 3D, which would come out a year later, was shot with. The over-under 3D camera, if you will. However, people that are into that kind of thing. And they both have very similar looks to them. And in the fact that once you 2D it or whatever. I think in the more recent DVDs they've cleaned them up, but some of the original VHS transfers and stuff were grainy as heck, and it's because you basically only use one lens worth when you cut it back down, and it's just really, it's awful. So, I mean, it's like looking through one glass that's kind of smudged to watch it. So, but now in more recent DVD transfers, it's a little cleaner, but this is movie, again, they're not going to put a lot of money in this, because goodness knows what the DVD returns and triple dips have been off of this thing, through the years, but yeah.
And we're all still waiting on the uncensored versions of all these movies.
I have a feeling that when they get around to this new one, that is, as we're recording these and releasing them in 2016, there's supposedly another Friday the 13th remake in process for 2017 that's going to be a Jason origin story or something. I don't know. The version of this thing has gone around so many different times now, I don't know what to believe. But if that ever comes out, I feel like you might get those uncuts back out there. I know there's been a couple of releases of those, but not in proper.
The first 3 have come out uncut. It's 4 where you're really missing a lot of footage.
Yes, and we'll get to that one on the next show because there's quite a bit to talk about when it comes to it. But yeah,
oh boy.
Yeah. But part 3, here we are. The thing in this one is everybody says, "Well, this is the one where Jason gets his mask," and I did not know the story behind it until doing a little research for this podcast, Ron. That is almost as accidental as the William Shatner mask from Halloween or whatever. They needed to do a lighting test, and nobody wanted to go through the trouble or time to actually put makeup on to make somebody stand in front of it. So the 3D supervisor was a big hockey geek, and he had a Detroit Red Wings mask in his bag, and he just tossed it to the stunt man, and he put it on, and it was entirely too small, but they were like, yeah, that kind of looks cool, and they just made bigger masks for Ted White, the stunt man. Or not Ted White, I'm sorry, for Richard Brooker to wear, the stunt man. Ted White's in 4. But, and that's, I mean, it's almost by complete accident that becomes the icon of Jason Voorhees, is that friggin' hockey mask.
Well, I mean, they say necessity is the mother of invention. And more movies have been made on limited budgets than on unlimited budgets. So a lot of times if you've got some kind of restrictions, or in this case, just pure laziness, you could come up with something that's better than what you were actually planning on doing.
I think it's also a little bit to, if you're to believe William Shakespeare actually once wrote or said this, is that brevity is the soul of wit, which means don't waste my friggin' time. And don't overthink it, kids. Sometimes it is what it is. And it's a great look. We'll talk about it when we get there. But yeah, I do also laugh and chuckle at all the extra stuff when they talk about that the production staff totally admits this time casting was based totally off the way people looked. Like everybody from the lead girl down to the bottom extra was just, they look all right, yeah, they go with it. Like there were no screen tests. If they ever release footage of that, I will assume it's from another movie, because there's no way that they did any and they didn't even try with most of these people. Like, you can tell, and I'm not knocking them. Look, we said from the beginning, if you're going to watch a Friday the 13th movie, you have to go in accepting for the fact that these things are made purely for profit and no thought whatsoever is given to the story. Like, they don't even try to have a story in most of them.
You mean you're not a fan of Kenneth Branagh's Friday the 13th?
I indeed am not. But you know what? As we get into this film, and I think before we go any further into it, I think you got to tell people what goes down in part 3 here, Ron. So hit us up with a plot summary.
Sure thing. Chris Higgins and several of her friends are looking for a little rest and relaxation at the Higgins family's summer cottage, which just happens to be next to Crystal Lake. Years ago, Chris was attacked by a mysterious man in the woods and is still shaken by the memories. Of course, that man was Jason Voorhees, who is back to take out her friends and anyone else who gets in the way. Chris proves to be a worthy adversary as she injures the now hockey mask-wearing maniac several times before she finally puts him down with an axe to the forehead. However, in a strange scene post-climax, Chris is in a canoe when the decomposed body of Mrs. Voorhees, complete with reattached head somehow, jumps out of the water to drag her under. Was that a dream? Was it just Chris's fractured psyche? All we know for sure is Jason lies motionless on a hay bale with an axe in his head as credits roll at the end of part 3.
I'm sorry I couldn't contain myself, because it's one thing to watch this film. It's another to try to describe it to somebody. And I want to admit now, I wrote that almost totally off of the back of the DVD that I have, with the exception of the last paragraph there about the ending, because it ends with, Chris is a worthy adversary. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the end? Because we got to talk about that. And here's the funny thing. The producers, Mancuso and the people writing this and stuff, thought, well, this is going to be it. We're going to make a trilogy out of it. So number 3 is it. We're going to end it, and we'll kill him dead this time. We'll just put an axe in his forehead. That'll be friggin' awesome, right? And then somewhere near the end of the film, they're like, well, we might come back. I'm sure someone from Paramount said, don't totally do anything irreversible. Because if they saw the dailies of this, I mean, the thing is that they shot this very quickly, but it took them forever to do anything, because it took 30 minutes to set up a 2-second shot with a yo-yo. I mean, like they spent hours doing stuff that, because of the 3D. But like what the stuff they were producing out, the Paramount was like, oh yes, we want more. So it may have been their intention to end it, but somebody upstairs said, don't do anything totally irreversible.
Yeah, they actually changed the ending from, I believe you're supposed to get decapitated.
Oh, actually, the original ending is Chris is having this freak out again, and she turns around, and we see the machete decapitate her, a la callback to part 1. So in the end, Jason was supposed to win, and nobody was supposed to survive. So
interesting.
Apparently, that is in the novelization of this, which if you have the money to spend on that, please Xerox it for me, because I will never buy it to read it. But I've been told that in a number of resources that the original script had her being beheaded.
Yeah, if you have the money to buy a novelization, just let us know and we'll set up a Patreon for you.
Yeah, we don't do donations on this podcast, but if you want to talk to us on the side, we'll gladly let you sponsor us. So anyway, yeah, but you know what though? I kind of like the idea of that. I know it'll never happen, but like they say there's an ending where they shot that, where they, and it just didn't look right and they decided to go the other way. But I kind of would want to see that. It's a little dark, but it would have been fun.
Well, think about it this way. Like you said, there's all the difficulties of shooting with 3D, and every shot took forever to set up. And they made the movie for $2.3 million. Imagine how cheap it would have been if they could have just shot it with a normal camera and gotten it done in a month.
I mean, yeah, they would have spent half the money on this if they could have. And I've heard a lot of people say this, and I think it's a very fair criticism and almost joke about this film, is that Friday the 13th gave up so early. It's like, what do we got left to do? I don't know, 3D. It's just like you usually wait on that for a few sequels. Nah, just go ahead and do it. So
it was the fad at the time. Everybody was doing 3D again.
This was the thing that brought it back, oddly enough. Jaws did it, and then all these Amityville had a 3D, which if you've ever seen that, talk about bad sequels. Maybe one day, but I mean, really, you're right. It was a renaissance for 3D in the 80s. It was the first one Paramount had produced since the 50s. So they were all in on this thing, and there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff about the 3D and all that they went through to try to make this work. But all the actors and people that will talk about it will tell you that what they mostly spent the time doing was letting people set up the 3D shot, and then they would shoot the thing, and it was we got it, good, we're done. There was no getting another take at it, because once they finally got it in focus, they were like, we're moving on. We got to keep going here, because they did get this thing out quick. I mean, they took an extra year in between part 2 and this, but they knew what they were doing with it. I love how this one picks up too. It's the end of part 2 again, but we get a little extra scene. We get Jason kind of crawling away, and we don't get that weird jump through the window scene that was at the end of part 2 that we both thought was just so inexplicable. And they kind of retcon themselves. And in a time before there was a lot of home video release of these things, you get away with it, right? Because it had been a couple of years since anybody had seen Friday the 13th too. Yeah.
I mean, I think even we're both still old enough to remember when things didn't come out on VHS, or when to buy VHS movies would cost you $100 because you had to buy a commercial VHS.
Oh yeah, it was long before the sell through, and even before the rental thing had taken over. That was more like 84, 85 that rentals started taking over everything in 86. This was early into that. So it also explains the reason for the extended playback of things that have happened. Some previous kills, but not as much as we had before. Actually, I had remembered that there were more of that, but they really just give us that new extra scene at the end.
Maybe they're more confident that they're pitching to an audience of loyal perverts.
Maybe it's that, or maybe that they just figured, who cares anyway? Because the funny thing is Jason was like this sort of hunched over, hunchback of Notre Dame mountain man looking thing last time, and in the concept of a day. I mean, this is supposed to be the next day, so I guess ostensibly Saturday the 14th is happening now. He bulks up. One, his shoulders and arms are huge now, and he recovers from what had to have been a severed collarbone, and he shaves his head. So I'm like, Jason goes for a totally new look when he goes to rip off new clothes at the local market.
Yeah, it's he's getting a little more Toxic Avenger-y, except he predates the Toxic Avenger.
Thank you. A lot of people will say Chunk from the Goonies, but honestly, my first thought was Toxic Avenger. It does kind of look Toxic Avenger-ish.
And considering Toxic Avenger doesn't come out until '84, the same year as Friday the 13th, the next chapter, or the final chapter, excuse me, there's definitely, I guarantee you Lloyd Kaufman saw this at Times Square. It was like, I could do that for $100.
I'm sure he did. In his only in his Roger Corman type way could he do that. But can we talk about the theme song for a second before we get to Harold and Edna, who get whacked here pretty early with Jason's new outfit? What in the world is this thing?
It's awesome is what it is.
It's hilarious is what it is. Okay, Harry Manfredini will tell you they basically just reused the score from part 2 because he was working on another movie, but he wrote a couple little pieces, and then he took the Jason theme over to a disco guy who was like, and he said, that was the thing at the time. So we thought, well, this is a great idea. And so he said, you got to have these chords and it's got to have this little move in it. And the disco guy was like, yeah, man, that's fresh. And he said, then 3 weeks later it came out and he was like, well, I guess that'll do it. And that was it. And I mean, I'm like, that is so gonzo and hilarious that it could only work in a Friday the 13th movie.
I'm a little disappointed they didn't carry that throughout the rest of the franchise.
Yeah, this is the one and only right here. Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you have loved like a nice Blondie style Friday the 13th theme for part 4?
Well, later on they're going to get into the Bond motif, and I'm like, why didn't you just get a new song every time and it become like a Bond thing? Like, who's going to do the Friday the 13th theme song this year?
Yeah, you can get Duran Duran, you could get Stryper.
Stryper doing a Friday the 13th song would have been so awesome, by the way. How did that not happen? So
it would probably cost too much to get like Stryper, but you could probably get like Scorpions.
No, you could have got Wasp. They'd have done it for nothing.
Oh yeah.
During the sticker days, Twisted Sister would have done 3 of them probably. Come on, I mean we missed out on that, but no, I do love the funky theme song and graphics. I wrote down Jaws 3D style and realized I'm talking about a movie that comes out a year later. So Universal just ripped off Paramount's opening here pretty much for if you've ever seen Jaws 3D. So which I have seen in 3D. So I do love that we get a laundry pole all up in my face. Here and exposition on the television screen because no character can be trusted to tell us anything in this movie, Ron. So I have to listen very carefully to the murder news that is going down as Harold, the general store, eat his own product guy, and his shrew wife are talking about things going down neighborly to them.
All right. A quick question about Harold. As he's walking through his store eating the things he's ostensibly selling, he drinks from a thing of what looks like Sunny Delight.
Yes.
Here's the thing. It's sitting on a shelf, a non-refrigerated, like wooden shelf with Sunny Delight on it. How terrible would that be after your mouthful of peanuts?
Warm Sunny Delight with a mouthful of peanuts chased by a chocolate donut.
Yeah.
By a man who, by the way, has used the bathroom and not washed his hands.
Oh, of course not.
Or used paper, let's just say.
Yeah.
It's awful. Yeah, it is. I think it's one of those, again, we talked about how Jason a lot of times kills people that you don't like, and immediately you're like, I don't give a crap who these people are. So you're like, well, I guess Jason's going to kill him because they do a Halloween thing here. They let Jason stand behind sheets and just kind of lurk. But we've never seen him doing that. Like, we know he does it because you see it from his point of view sometimes in the first 2 movies, but you never see the outline of his body hanging there and people going like, what you doing, and they have no idea what's going on out there. And I'm like, people that live out in the country like this, that run that kind of a store, I think they would be the kind of folks that if they heard about mass murder on the news, they'd be locking everything down. Like, I don't think they've been loading up guns. Like, I don't think these are the kind of people that are like, whatever.
Yeah, that's definitely not the right response for something like that for people like this. Because Harold might be a nice guy. We see he's nice to animals or whatever, but Edna's definitely ready to shoot somebody.
Oh, totally. Well, yeah, Harold and his rabbit thing, which is that is again why that had to be. I don't know, but we had to have somebody had a rabbit as a pet. I guarantee you, in the crew, and they're like, "That thing is so cute. Just put it on the screen. Hey, it seems kind of like the guy that plays Harold. Just let him play with it, okay?" And I'm sure that rabbit is like, "I'm going to poop on you. I'm going to poop." It has that look on its face.
Yeah,
it's like, "I'm not happy with you touching me." So, can we talk about the fake snake that jumps out of the mailbox or whatever that was?
To set up a poop joke?
Yes. What was that all about?
Somebody had a rubber snake, I guess.
I mean, these are the things they're putting in our face, and I'm going, wow, we really don't know. Like, we just decided to do a movie in 3D with absolutely no idea of what we wanted to do in 3D, right? Like, there are a couple of shots where they used the 3D with what you think it would be with Jason stabbing things or whatever, but most of it is this kind of crap.
Yeah, a ridiculous, like, wasted 3D, waste of a rubber snake kind of shots.
And they would spend hours setting them up. That's what I find hilarious, is I don't know how they got a movie made with as much time as they spent setting up these shots.
Oh, I'm sure they didn't pay any of the actors anything.
Probably not.
That's where your savings comes. Everybody's working for scale.
Yeah, I can see that. It is the Blumhouse thing again, right? Or before that existed, but and with people that were never going to be big enough to cash in on it on the long run, because again, they're cast by you have good hair, you look nice body, nice smile, you can walk in your hands, cool.
Will you take your top off for this movie? Yes. Okay, you're in.
That's pretty much everybody in this movie. It seems like we'll get to the gratuitous nudity here in a bit, but the kills though. Okay, so Harold gets it with a meat cleaver in the chest, and then Edna gets the knitting meat needle through the back of the head or whatever. I thought they were pretty good makeup effects. Tom Savini was actually available, and they just didn't ask him for whatever reason. So I guess they just went with their same cheap guys from part 2.
He probably wanted more than $5 to do it.
That is also true. So
I mean, he had to be definitely more in demand after the success of the first Friday the 13th.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was working the last time. That's why they didn't get him for part 2. But then, he will tell you, I was available for 3, and they didn't ask me, so I just figured, that's kind of come and gone. He'll come back for part 4, which is the part of that story that makes him go, and then they call me for part 4, and I was like, sure. So, because I guess there were some more zeros at the end of the check, or actually zeros at the end of the check this time around. So, but no, they get it, and we kind of want that. And then we meet our new cast, right? Okay, so we get Chris. Let's talk about Chris here first, right? As final girls go, she's definitely not high on the list of commanding performances in my book in horror films. But No, she's got a little bit of that Phoebe Cates from Gremlins thing going on. That's what she kind of reminds me of. And it's not just because she has the monologue where she stares off into the nothing and tells a story about how she was attacked by Jason once, but it's in her eyes, the way she dresses, her voice, the way she looks. I mean, she really does kind of look like Phoebe Cates to me.
That's probably why they cast her. They were like, "Can we get budget Phoebe Cates?" Yes.
I mean,
okay,
would
great.
anybody have even known who that was at this point? I mean, this came out the same time as Fast Times, so nobody knew who she even was. This is the funny thing, and it beat the crap out of it at the box office, by the way. So it's funny that we mentioned that, because this is before Phoebe Cates was anything anybody would know. But unless, I guess maybe people knew her from TV and stuff. But
see, I thought she was more of a thing by this time, but my memory is...
Yeah, I'm missing her, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, but I don't know. Again, Chris as a final girl, I don't know. She's got problems. That's clearly the case. I mean, this trip is kind of, I don't know, forced catharsis. She's kind of doing an Alice here from part 2. She's making herself go back to the scene of the attack or something.
Yeah, I think that's the point. It's like aversion therapy or the opposite of aversion therapy, where you expose yourself to the thing you're afraid of by degrees and become more comfortable with it.
Maybe that's why she's friends with a guy who dresses up in horror masks like Shelley. Because otherwise, why would she ever hang out with a dude like that?
Oh, Shelley's Rick's roommate, I think.
That's what it is. Okay, so no, not Rick's roommate.
Or not Rick.
Andy's roommate.
Andy's roommate, yeah. And they drag him along because I assume Andy couldn't get rid of him.
He got him a date, for this.
Somehow.
Somehow. I guess he must have lied to her. I don't know. Let's talk about Andy and Debbie, though. Because they're our lovey-dovey couple here, right?
Uh-huh.
And Andy is a bit of a circus performer in training, right? Like, he's great with the yo-yo. He can walk on his hands all the time. He seems to be pretty athletic or whatever. And Debbie, aside from having a great voice for a future newscaster and a good look, may be the greatest horror girlfriend ever, okay?
Yeah.
First off, she's pregnant. All right, we find this out, which, by the way, that had to be early on because there's a shower scene with her and no. So, but okay, so I don't know how she knew that, but whatever. So she's pregnant. She's really nice to Chris. Like, apparently they're buds, She lets Andy be his goofy self. She's always talking about having sex with him. She reads Fangoria. What else could you want from this chick? I mean, she's the greatest stereotypical horror girlfriend ever. It's like a nerd's dream. And she's gorgeous.
Yeah, she's definitely good looking, and she's not, like, offended when it's time to pass around the six-pack or pass around trying to get Chuck and Chili to pass the bong up front.
Right, yeah, the joints are going. She's like, nah, I'm going to pass. Remember, I'm pregnant. But, like, she doesn't care if everybody else partakes.
Yeah, so she's definitely surprisingly cool.
Yeah, very surprisingly cool. I think you could write, like, a whole series of articles on Den of Geek about Debbie. So, I mean, but the pregnant angle, why is that there? They don't reference it. They don't really come back to it ever again, except to drop that line like twice.
Maybe it was an attempt to make her death a little more tragic.
I guess. I mean, but it's like that makes it awful. Like, that makes this movie try to go into a place that it's never tried to be before, where it's never tried to be serious about who got killed. It's just people got killed. It's just they got killed. We've never. Like, now Debbie's got other things going on that we have to root for and think about. It's very, for 1982, I know it was a topic. It was something that people would be thinking about, but it's also very unsettling.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird decision. I don't know if it was... the only thing I could think of other than that is that the actress was not willing to drink the near beer that they were handing out. So they had to write a reason around that wouldn't take away her cool points.
They could have just let her be like ex-Mormon or something. I don't know. So, I don't know. It is odd, and I haven't watched enough behind-the-scenes stuff and seen enough to see if they ever bother to try and explain it. I don't really care. It's just they make a point of calling it out, and it also changes something for me here. These are like college-age kids, right? These are not high schoolers anymore.
No, I would say these are definitely college kids or 35-year-olds in some cases.
Well, yeah, Chuck and Chili are definitely like the adult chaperones.
Chuck and Chili are the non-traditional students.
Maybe they all go to a community college. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. And they do hang with the non-traditional students. Or maybe Chuck and Chili work at the community college with them. I don't know. They're like their dorm parents or something. So, really, because they're the campus dealers. Yeah, well, Chuck and Chili, obviously, we're ripping off Cheech and Chong there, but we're going co-ed this time. So, not the kind of people you'd put together, So, again, they didn't do a great job of Andy and Debbie look like they go together. All the other, quote, couples here do not look like they fit with each other, like, at all. No, but Chuck does kind of look like Tommy Chong. He does have a little bit of Tommy Chong going, you're right. And I think all of it is in the beard and the headband and the glasses. That's just yeah. They definitely said, can you grow a beard? Yes. All right, you got this. Exactly. So, can you smoke? Well, I actually don't smoke. Well, we'll just get you some oregano and okay, go with it. So, I don't know what they had all kinds of stuff for him to smoke apparently on this, but that was not real marijuana, they say. But we meet these people, right? We meet Vera, who has the mean, typically angry Hispanic mother. Or was that Spanish she was screaming at, or I don't know. It just sounded like it.
I assume it's Spanish because I don't know if there were any other available minorities in 1982 or whatever.
I would be curious to know if she actually even saying anything, or if that's just somebody else working on the set. This is what my grandmother used to sound like when she got really pissed at my dad.
Probably just some angry gibberish.
Right. We also get an inexplicable new Ralph for one scene, who's laying in the road, who has an eyeball, which apparently comes from Harold or Edna at some point.
Yeah, I didn't get the whole. I don't understand what the point was with new Ralph, because if you were going to do that, why did you kill off old Ralph?
Right, or why didn't you just let that guy come back and be like, "You killed my brother," and now I'm back.
Yeah, it's the Crank 2 solution.
There we go. Right,
where they're identical twins.
Right, do that, something. I don't know, but I'll tell you the reason is so. Let's stick that eyeball in the frame. That'll freak everybody out in the seats. I guess in 1982 it didn't take a lot, but woo, holy cow. It's really a weird scene, and again, not somebody we ever see again. So if he had gotten killed, or if he was hanging from a tree later or something, it would have made some sense. But again, they spent too much time setting up the shots in this movie. They didn't have time to worry about where are we in the script. Who cares? And we get to meet Rick, who I wrote down as Chris's whatever. What are they? He's a local farm boy that apparently works for her family's farm that has no animals, by the way. But what is he to her? Because besides being a total dick,
I don't know. They've got kind of the weird Friday the 13th Part 2 vibe.
But Paul and Jenny they made out. You could tell they were for real or whatever. It's more like the Part 1 thing with Alice and old Steve.
Oh, yeah. That's better.
It feels more like that. It's because Rick is clearly at least 10 years older than this chick. Easily.
10 to 15. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a great voice, by the way. I understand he went on to become a chiropractor or something in life, and he's got a great voice and stuff. He sounds like a disc jockey almost, but when it comes down to it, though, he does nothing useful the entire film except sit there and let her exposition into the woods.
Maybe that's his whole point. Maybe he's her therapist.
Why didn't we do that? Might as well. We'll get to therapists later in this series. They'll do that one too. So when you got 10 movies, man, there's not many tropes we're not going to cross. So, but we're only with the third one. So I did write that at this point, because the music is just all over the place, that it's as out there as the visuals are supposed to be. In fact, I think the music is more 3D than the film.
Yeah, it's. I wish I was one of those lucky people who'd got the 6 CD box set of the music. They put out a box set of music from the first 6 movies or whatever, and it sold out in less than a day because apparently everybody wanted it.
I can only imagine what there would have been to listen to on it. Maybe there's a lot of stuff from this that we just don't hear, but.
It's worth it for this opening theme alone.
It's weird. It's the last movie too, where they don't have real music. They don't try to find actual songs to put in it. The rest of the time they actually do put a pop soundtrack to it, but this time it's all this funky synth and stuff, which has always been there. Again, it's most of the score is from Part 2, but when they try to play music that people are listening to, I don't know what this is from off the AM dial.
Yeah, somebody found somebody rooted through John Carpenter's garbage.
Yeah, the low cuts off of Carpenter stuff. By the way, on a side note, if you just want something cool to listen to on Spotify, Lost Themes from Carpenter is really good. It's exactly what you think it would be if you haven't listened to it. I'll put a little plug in there for John Carpenter, who hates this series, by the way, and thinks it's complete garbage. But anyway,
he's not wrong.
He's not, but it can be fun. So we meet the lamest biker gang known to mankind. Okay?
Yeah.
Fox, Loco, and Ali. All right? They have a run-in in the store with Shelly and Vera. We run over their motorcycles. They punch through Paul's VW Bug. That VW Bug goes through a beating. It's the first victim, really, of the film after Edna and Harold. Like, it gets destroyed by these people, but they're still able to drive it out of there. And this biker gang decides, we're going to go siphon the gas out of your van and burn the barn down, but we're not going to hurt anybody. Like, one of them goes out of their way to say, we're not going to hurt nobody. I'm like, but why not? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? And how far was town from this place that they could just go, well, I bet they're from over there? I mean,
maybe they follow, maybe it's a dirt road all the way back from the gas station or whatever that store was supposed to be, and they just followed the trail all the way. Or maybe it's just, the magic of plot convenience.
Well, do we have a sheet where we're told how they got there? I don't know, man. I don't know. Set up that yo-yo shot again. We'll worry about that later. I'm sure that's how the conversation went. Sure, Steve Miner was like, there's a script? Oh, there's a script? Okay. So as long as the actors have it, I don't really need it. So
yeah, and let's not kid ourselves. It's never a great idea to start a barn fire.
No.
And then to say, oh, nobody's going to get hurt. You don't know that.
No.
These idiots are clearly all over this plot of land. You don't know who's doing what in the hayloft.
Exactly. You've already got like people hanging out, and what they don't know is Jason is hanging out in the friggin' hayloft, because he's stalking these people because he doesn't have his face cover anymore. So he's stalking them, waiting for his chance to get at them, right? And he takes a chance. He kills Fox off screen. A lot of off screen kills. We've already talked about that in the first two movies but we get to see more evidence here. He hangs her up by the neck with a pitchfork, which is a pretty cool looking gag. And then he puts one through Loco's stomach, which I assume is one of those shots that's supposed to come through the screen.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think one of the reasons why they did the off screen kill of Fox was because they couldn't figure out a way to make the spines go towards the camera and still have her stuck against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, because Jason's at least a foot taller than her, so he's got to stab her, pick her up, and then jam her through the door, the overframe of the barn. And this is all on a cut collarbone. This man is strong. So I mean, he's been eating his Wheaties out there in the woods all these years with Mom's head. So.
He's got what in the olden days, in the non-PC days, you used to be able to call it retard strength.
Yeah, country strong, a little Lenny maybe. Let him go pet the rabbit for a while.
Speaking of, why wasn't Harold's name Lenny?
Why wasn't it? Yeah, because again, if they spent any time working on this story, somebody would have figured that out. But they were more worried about that laundry pole's not in focus. So they spent all day on that. So Ali, though, gets clubbed because he comes at Jason with a machete, and Jason hits him with a stick a bunch and leaves him, and he'll come back later, which is funny because Jason usually overkills people, but he just lets that guy live. He's like, oh, shiny. He sees the machete, and it's I'm all about that now. So the iconic weapon and the mask are all happening in the same movie.
Which is to me really interesting because I don't know about you. Maybe it's because I live in the city, but I could count on one hand the number of people I know that have machetes.
You can add one more to that because I actually own one because I've used one to clear off some little wooded area behind where we live now and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, you can get decently expensive ones, but they're not that strong of a weapon. In fact, they bend and break pretty easy. Chopping down just little sapling stuff. So what Jason's able to accomplish with one in this movie later on is fairly impressive.
He must have he must have got the full tang version.
No, that one was made in America. The one I've got is probably stamped out in Thailand somewhere, or something like that, or Venezuela or something. But yeah, so they don't make them like they used to. So we do get the flashback scene here, though, where Chris is telling Useless Rock Hudson or whatever her run-in with Jason, who, by the way, is wearing the same clothes he has on now for the run-in. But continuity aside, I wrote down, is this inspired by Phoebe Cates' thing? And I was like, nope, wait a minute, that was later. And I was like, I think they ripped that off. Somebody ripped somebody off here. I would not put me past Spielberg seeing this, going, this movie is crap, but that was actually pretty good. and telling Phoebe Cates, do that Friday the 13th thing. So
Yeah,
that
I
scene.
I could definitely see that
I guarantee you, Joe Dante saw this movie, so he probably
Joe Dante saw this movie in Times Square.
exactly. So yeah, he may have been the one that told her about it, but I so see that in this now, and I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable question right now. Okay, what happens between Chris and Jason in the woods 2 years prior?
Oh, that's a great question. It does come across a little molesty.
I mean, this is the second time this movie has presented information without saying much more about it, but that is very uncomfortable to think about. We've got a pregnant girl, that is going to be slaughtered later. And now we've got this girl who may or may not have been assaulted in the woods. And I'm not trying to make fun of that, okay? It's not a funny thing. But to just sort of throw that out there and then do nothing with it, to like give us nothing else with it, shows me how little thought they really put into any of this, and that I'm applying way more thought to it than is necessary. But
do you think they established that the only reason that they established she had a run-in with Jason years before is to retcon how adult Jason would coexist with his decapitated mother?
I think that's exactly it. I think they already realized, well, we've kind of set this up out here that the end of part one was just a dream, but that he was still out there somewhere, and that he has seen this happen. So that's why he even kills like his mother did in that second movie. He kills like she did in the first one, and in this one too, he kills almost just like she did. So it's like he was watching it the whole time anyway. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if that's not part of why this exists here, and also to have an excuse to why this girl would go out there. Other than just I want to go out there with my friends, like they want to try to give her some greater meaning than just that. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's the '80s. You could have dyed her hair, and she could have gone out there to detox from heroin.
Something, right?
Like the Evil Dead remake.
Right. Yeah. I don't think they were thinking that far ahead. Was heroin even a thing in 1982? I guess it had come on the scene at that point. So.
Oh, yeah, because that's what Sid Vicious died from.
Oh, that's right. So maybe they could have done that. You're right. But
she could have been a punk rocker.
Yeah, but they don't go that route. They make her very squeaky clean because she is like as undressed as some of these other women get in this movie, particularly Debbie later on or whatever. This woman stays as clothed as possible. I'm assuming this isn't supposed to be like the fall or the winter or something. These people are wearing sweaters. I mean, I'm like, is it that cold out there in Jersey in the summer night? Maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah. I know just from camping around lakes that it does get colder at night.
True.
But I mean, maybe there's a big difference between the temperature in Kentucky and the temperature in upstate New York or wherever this is supposed to be.
This is supposed to be in Jersey again.
In Jersey again? Okay.
I do think this was all shot in California so that they could be close to the 3D experts, though. So they did move it from the East Coast to the West Coast on this one.
That's a surprise.
Yeah. So, well, it was all because they had to do 3D stuff. So that was the only reason. So it's also probably why the budget was as high as it was. So.
Maybe Crystal Lake is near Tromaville.
There you go. Very well could be. Could have been a suburb, or neighboring county. They played each other in high school, so yeah. like Fairvale and whatever that one in Psycho 3 is the other high school. So and Norman Bates is part of California or wherever he is. But yeah, we get her flashback, and then we get kills 5 and 6, and this has been set up like there's a lot of setup with these characters. Everybody's kind of Chuck and Chili are off doing their thing. They're popping popcorns, going to get higher than they already are. Debbie and Andy have gone off to find better things to do with their hands. Because there's been a juggling contest, and now Vera, like poor Shelley, is trying to make the moves on Vera. She's like, "Oh, hold on there, cowboy, not quite." And he, as retaliation, she goes down to the lake or whatever, and he jumps out of the lake wearing a hockey mask, a diving suit, and a spear gun at her to try and scare her, and it works. I will say right now, the fact that he had all that gear on him for this trip, I'm like, you go in planning that you're going to do this to people. Like, you didn't just say, well, I think I'll throw on the wetsuit now.
Yeah, Shelley is definitely the kind of guy who sits around and thinks of fun pranks, in quotes. He would have been like a YouTube superstar 20, 30 years in the future, because this is the kind of stuff that those monsters on YouTube do to pass off as practical jokes.
I could see him on a show like Jackass. Like, my name's Shelly, and I'm going to be screwing with Vera all day, and that's what would have gone down, But it's also the boy cried wolf bit, because when we see him later, he's basically killed off screen. He walks into Chuck and Chili's area bleeding from the neck, and they think he's just screwing around, and no, he actually is dying. So
because that would be that would have been like the third time he's faked his death
right
to this point.
Exactly. And he's already done it once, and so yeah.
And believe me, they could not kill this guy off fast enough for me.
You were ready for him to die?
I hated him so much.
He is annoying, isn't he, in a plump little way? So I mean,
yeah, Jonah Hill's dad is terrible.
You know what? He is very Jonah Hill, but with none of the comic timing, though. Sorry, Larry. But yeah, so he has none of that Superbad going on there. Boy, I just rewrote Superbad to be a much better film than it is, by the way. What if Jason had shown up? So
yes.
That would have been a great third act. Forget Emma Stone. So bring in Jason. But anyway, we get Vera, who drops Shelly's wallet in the water, so she's going to get it, and she's relating to this wallet because there's a picture of him with grandma or something in it, which is oh, he's sweet. Maybe I should go give him another chance. And then Jason walks out on the pier and for 6 minutes stands there lining up that one-handed spear gun shot.
Yeah.
But I love that she's like, "Come on, Shelly," and does it by and. It's cheesy. You see the string or whatever, but it's impressive. That's a heck of a shot with a spear gun, man. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't know spear guns had that kind of range, but Jason has many skills. I mean, we've seen him chop,
Yeah.
We've seen him strangle, we've seen him. Didn't he use a bow and arrow?
Not yet, but
Not yet.
Mom did though in that
Mom
other
did,
movie. But
yeah.
But he has used arrows to hang people up. He's hung people with the darn pitchfork at this point. He's strong, no doubt, and he gets that shot. And then I love the swagger of it's great because he shoots her and he drops the spear gun like James Bond style, done. So, and I love, and I can only think Richard Brooker was like, "I'm tired of standing here holding this thing," and that was his final reaction was, "Ugh, did you get it?"
Yeah. How long it took Jason to line up that shot? Imagine how long it took them to work out the logistics of the flying spear, B, how to get it to fly towards the 3D camera without hitting the 3D camera, which is worth more than every actor's life on the set.
Exactly, right. How to not hit the boom mic so you could, you're picking up all the ambient sound, how to get the sound synced with it right in the post-production. Then they had to figure out what to do with, the upper half of Vera that they, jam that thing into, and so it looks realistic, which is a good makeup job, by the way. That takes time to cast a full body like that and do that. I thought that looked cool. So
yeah, it's definitely one of the highlights of one of the best kills of Part 3 for sure.
It may be one. It may be the best kill actually, because the next two though are pretty good.
Yeah,
Andy
I'm
and
partial
Debbie?
to our next to kill 7.
Okay, so Andy and Debbie are getting it on in a hammock, which I understand is mostly impossible. I've never tried it, but the research is lacking, in my opinion, on whether or not that would actually work. But people I've talked to say there's no way so that's happening. But again, another reason Debbie's the greatest girlfriend ever, because a hammock, sure.
Yeah, considering how much trouble I have getting in a hammock as one person, I can only imagine how much trouble it is when you've got two people in there trying to engage in activities.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so they get done, and Debbie goes to take a shower, and Andy decides to go downstairs and get some drinks, right? And he's walking on his hands, and I'm sure this is just something like the actor said, "Hey, I can do this," and they're like, "This is pretty cool. Figure out how to chop this kid in half." So now you say you love this kill, so I'll let you take it from there.
Yes, as Andy's walking around on his hands, who should he run into but good old Mr. Jason Voorhees himself? And Jason puts that newly found machete, the strongest machete ever made, clearly, to good use. And he cleaves this kid in two from groin to probably about what's that chest thing?
Right the sternum, like right under the rib cage. It looked like.
Yeah,
to me.
like
I mean,
if you judging by the bisected body we see later, he got him from like crotch to rib cage.
I can see that in 3D, that would have probably freaked people the hell out. Like to see that coming down and just the way he sort of flops to the ground. It is the effective kill of this film. I mean, it's grotesque. It's sudden, and it's also, I mean, it's impressive again because you're taking something that's a little more than just a good knife and you're chopping a body in half with it. It's pretty awesome work.
Yeah, this is one of the ones along with the wheelchair kill from part 2 that you see on all of the montages.
Yes, this one always gets you. The other thing, the pitchfork like coming at you that ultimately gets in Loco, I've seen that one on a ton of those too. They show that one a lot for reasons too. But no, I'm with you. There's a reason they showed this, and it works great. And then Debbie, I'm waiting for Debbie to get it in the shower. I forget how she dies, which is amazing considering this is also one of those scenes that they show like on Terror in the Isles and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. She climbs into the hammock to read Fangoria, as I've already said, makes her even more awesome. So like every pregnant girlfriend reads Fangoria, sure. So, and blood starts like as if on cue. Jason has set that body up there and is like, if I just lay it in this perfect angle, when she lays down, it'll start dripping on her. And and it starts dripping all over the ad for fake teeth or whatever. And Debbie in a great ADR line, what's this? Because her mouth is not moving. So when that happens, gets it Kevin Bacon style through the hammock.
Yeah, that's definitely probably like my third favorite kill of the movie.
It is gross too, man. I mean, the blood spurts.
It looks really good. Like it's really well done. Must be why they had all the off-screen kills earlier, because they were saving their money for this one for the money shot.
The problem is that they blow it all in these because the next two kills are lame. But I mean, this one is right up there with Andy's in my opinion, and right alongside of Vera's in terms of just effectiveness and the way it works on the screen. And Tracy Savage will tell you it took them like a whole day of shooting to get this, because they did the whole cast of her chest, like her head's up behind, and trying to get the angle right, and then trying to make sure the thing spurts the right way and all this stuff. And she said it looked gross on the set when they did it, and it looked even better on screen. So, but kudos to her for selling it. I mean, it's well done. I know I'm praising somebody who's not like a real actor or anything. I think she gives the best performance in the film.
Yeah, if anything, she comes across the most like a normal human being.
This is probably why she got a career in news, because she comes off like someone you can relate to, which is what TV news people to do. So yeah, I could totally see it. But they're gone, and now we get to Chuck and Chili. We have to say these are pretty bad kills, right? Like Chuck gets thrown into a fuse box. That's kind of lame, right? Like how could he not get killed with like a drug paraphernalia of some kind?
Yeah, like his a bong rammed into his eye,
or something,
or like some kind of marijuana pipe like jammed in his neck.
Yeah, something like Jason would have used a lighter and lit him on fire. Something. I guess they didn't have the money for it or whatever. But
yeah, they didn't have money for a guy on fire. But clearly, they could have jammed some kind of pipe into his neck and had blood spray out of the mouth of the pipe. I think that would have been a cheap but good effect. I mean, corn syrup doesn't cost you that much, and you just need a plastic tube.
Exactly, and they've got tons of that laying around, clearly. So I don't know. It's a lame death. Chili's is okay because of the implication of what it could be. I mean, she gets a hot fire poker in the ribs. But I don't know. She's basically just getting impaled when it's all said and done. So the fact that it's on fire doesn't really matter. That actually would cauterize the wound, I think.
I think that much like I did, they forgot that these two were characters in the movie, and then they had to. When they got to the end of filming, they were like, "Oh, we still got two more people to kill. Let's just do it in one day. All right, you get smashed into a fuse box. We'll set some sparklers off, and you just get stabbed with a thing."
Yeah, the end. Yeah, I do think they did forget about him, and they went back and added it later. I can't find any proof of that, but I believe in your theory. I think there's merit to it. Paul, boy, I tell you, Paul gets tortured then killed. All right, Chris is looking for everybody. She can't find anybody yet, and Paul's outside, and he can't say anything because Jason's got his hand over his mouth and his hand on top of his head. And I was expecting him to like rip the head off, right? Like I thought that's what's going to happen here. He's going to rip his head clear off. Instead, he crushes his head until that fake eyeball pops out toward the screen, kind of like the way the snake did in the first scene. Matter of fact, it may have been the same spring.
Do you think it was the same eyeball that New Ralph was waving around earlier?
Would not doubt it. So wouldn't doubt it for a second that it was the same fake eyeball. Think how long it took him to set that one up to get the thing to pop out right. That had to be like hours and days to get that shot right. The actor here tells a funny story about, because later he gets thrown through the window, to scare Chris, and Kratka tells this story that they had a stuntman there to do it, and they had like an air ram that ramped the guy through the window, but they kept missing, and they kept hitting him low and high and low and high. And it took him forever to finally get it where he got through the window. So he said, so this poor stuntman spent a day getting jammed into the side of a house, and then I got to go and lay on the ground. So I thought, man, they clearly were in a hurry at that point to get stuff done. But we now get Final Girl in her final chase, right? Because we've got to do this in every movie, it seems like. The Final Girl's got to go on a chase with Jason. But I will say that Chris gets in some licks along the way on old, using Rick's body. I've been calling him Paul. That's the actor's name, but his character's name is Rick. She gets in some good stabs along the way. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more agency than we got in the first two movies from our Final Girl. She's definitely a little bit more on the ball, a little bit more aggressive. It's a nice change of pace than just your running and screaming. Now you get running and screaming and stabbing.
I do want to ask you, as she's hanging off the roof there or out the window and Jason's got her jacket and the members only jacket rips, does that count as a kill since it's the 1980s and it's a members only jacket?
Oh yeah, that's probably the most expensive shot of the movie.
It probably was. She comes away pretty good on him. I mean, she hangs him off the hay bale thing, which was really great. And I love the way he gets away from that. She's trying to get out the door, and then he does a one-arm pull-up on it, and pulls the mask up. I expected to see what's one-arm push-up man from City Slickers. What's that guy's name?
Jack Palance.
I expected to see Jack Palance behind the mask at that point. I was like, that's pretty awesome right there.
Yeah, that was really an impressive display.
Unimpressive is the face that they've got on Jason. We've already called it out for being Toxic Avenger meets Chunk or whatever. That is horrible.
You mean the bad rubber mask because they couldn't afford to do?
He looks so goofy. But there's nothing frightening about that. It's kind of a Hills Have Eyes type thing, but
yeah, but that's how Michael Berryman looks all the time, though. That's the problem.
No. Either that or he's the drummer from, AC/DC that sits in from them from time to time when the other one's not out murdering people, and stuff, the bald one. So, or the lead singer of Midnight Oil. Take your pick. They're all over there.
They definitely, in this one, they said something like they had two different Jason faces, one that was applied with a bunch of makeup that took 6 hours. And I'm not confusing this with one of the other movies, and then the other shot, for most of the time, it was the hockey mask over a rubber mask.
Yeah, I can believe that, actually, yeah. So, but no, I do like, though, that Ali, in a moment of redemption, comes back to take on Jason, but Jason cuts the arm off. That was a great-looking effect, by the way, with the arm getting cut. Then, over-murders him, right? He chops him into hamburger meat on the ground there. Because we don't see it, but you hear it, and the Foley work is amazing right there.
Yeah, it's definitely that's one of the scenes where we actually get Jason starting to over murder people. Maybe he was like, "Well, I thought this guy was dead already. Guess I didn't finish the job." And so since then, he's been overly murdery.
Yeah,
it goes to an abundance of effort to make sure that these people are all dead.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely does, but Chris nails him with that axe, and it's a great shot when he is stunned by it and then reaches out for her and kind of Frankenstein's toward her for a second. I thought that was really effective.
Yeah, that was kind kind of the first glimpse of the supernatural-ish Jason that we're going to get later on, I think.
Yeah, hold that thought, because I've got questions about that we'll get to when we get to part 4 here. But it's a great ending with him falling down on that hay bale, bleeding. And then the inexplicable coda in the lake, though, with Jason unmasked, running around the house, bloody, and the newly reheaded Mrs. Voorhees in the lake. What is that all about?
I think they're trying to establish that as like the same sort of hallucination that we got in the first part, where little Jason showed up to drag her into the water.
But like, not only is Mrs. Voorhees, like, she puts on her sweater again to get back in that lake with her sewn on head again, and she jumps out, and like, unlike that first one where it's a quick shot and the kid drags Alice under or whatever, they linger on that one like way too long. And it looks bad. It totally undermines whatever you're trying to do in that shot, which I don't know what you were trying to do, but it was dumb. What's a much better ending is Chris like being shoved into the. My wife got a kick out of the way the cop is like leading her out and shoves her into the police car. Like she's a perp or something, and she's just like crying and laughing at the same time. I did like the fact that she had just gone crazy, from it. This is 3 women in a row now that Jason is, well, 2 that he's just driven nuts. 1 he stabbed through the head, but the other 2 are just crazy now.
Yeah, that was a kind of a fun. That was a really fun moment. I had forgotten about the perp walk that she has to do at the end, so that was a pleasant surprise to me.
Yeah,
moment of unintentional comedy.
Right, when you've got Sheriff Tattoo there, to lead her off with his super 70s mustache, and to shove her into the back of that cop car. It was a little unsettling, but funny nonetheless. So. Maybe
he forgot that he was on the set of a horror movie and thought he was back on the set of Hill Street Blues.
It could have been. Maybe he looks like the guy that would be like one of the horn players in the theme song, though. Like he could have been one of those guys for like the Moody Blues or the Doobies, or he'd like a Doobie Brothers, what he looked like. But anyway, I think we're at the point of the podcast where it's time to put the Doobies out and to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So what are yours for Friday the 13th Part 3, Ron?
Once again, I hate to say it, I had a lot of fun with this one. It has some of the best kills of the series, like we said, so it's worth watching for that point alone. And while it seems like they have more of an idea of what they want the movies to be at this point, in spite of the 3D, it's like they've finally settled on Jason. This is how Jason's going to look. This is the weapon Jason's going to be known for, and this is basically the first Friday the 13th movie that feels like a Friday the 13th movie. So I had a lot of fun with it. I'm willing to go not to a large popcorn, but like maybe a medium popcorn with some extra butter, or like a bag of M&Ms that you dump down into the popcorn.
Ooh, that's an interesting modifier. I hadn't seen that one before, so I'm about to try that. I'm with you that I had a lot more fun with this movie than I really should have, considering how poorly the plot is constructed and that there really isn't one, and how poorly outside of Debbie it is acted. But the 3D effects are terrible. The kill effects are about half and half, but the half that's good are really good. And I do like the ending of it. It's not great. I don't even think it's as good as part 2, but it's fun enough, and it goes down pretty easy. I'm going to give it just a good medium popcorn. It's not the worst thing you could watch. And again, if you go into this Friday the 13th series expecting, high art and serious psychological terror, you're in the wrong movie series. Go watch Halloween. That's what that is. Don't expect that out of this bunch. They're doing this totally on the money grabbing for the cheap, and for that, it mostly works again. So I'll give it medium popcorn.
Yeah, they'll save the psychological aspects for Kenneth Branagh's Friday the 13th.
Indeed. So, which we will be getting to in a few weeks. So, well, folks, thanks for joining us in the latest edition of Film Strip. Of course, you can find all of our episodes at Our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. You can follow us on Facebook there, also on Twitter. Follow us individually on Twitter as well. We give a lot of updates there, and let us know what you think of the show. And leave us a positive review on iTunes. It helps other people find the show. We appreciate your support. Until next time, for Ron, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Filmstrip.
Thank you for listening to Filmstrip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.